up with Mark. And then 3 days later, it's really simple to follow up with Mark. Always follow up in the same thread that you originally sent the email to. It gets really awkward and hard whenever I get an email in my inbox from someone who's been emailing me, and it's just a completely new subject line. Maybe I don't recognize the email, and they're like, yeah, we talked a couple weeks ago, and we had this big idea. And I'm thinking, wait, what was it? Then I have to go search the email, and it just gets really complicated. So if you're going to follow up with someone, always follow up in the same thread. That makes it really simple for them to quickly catch up on what you were talking on and then be able to respond to you. And be explicit when you're going to stop contacting them. If for some reason they're ignoring you, if for some reason they're not responding to your emails, after 3 or 4 replies, just say, okay, I'll catch you later in about 6 months. And maybe, follow up with them later if you have a new project that you're working on or something like that. But make sure that you're not just dropping the ball. Make sure that you're being explicit about what you're doing. And that concludes the email section. Let's get to the second one. So let me actually add a couple extra tips for the email section specifically, because I forgot. There are a couple things that don't have to do with those specifics. So if you are having issues with things like grammar, because those do impact emails a lot, use something like Grammarly. Always check your email at very specific times. Something like 10 a.m. would be a great time to check your email, because that's when the 9 a.m. emails are going to have been sent out, and at maybe 3 p.m. or something like that. You'll be able to catch up on anything that you haven't read during the day, and you'll still be able to keep up that 24-hour response time. And finally, if you don't have a professional email address, probably get one. Before I joined Praxis, my email address was my nickname, which was Lollipop at the time, and it just wasn't really a professional email. So I got an email address with my first name, my last name at gmail.com, and that just made my professional interactions a lot better. So we're all in this, we've all made mistakes like that. And always remember, as you're using email, that taking the time to double check your email communication is always worth it. It's much better to avoid embarrassment at the end by taking about 5 minutes to check over every email. Now let's get to the meetings. If you're good at meetings, you're going to earn a lot of respect with people that are far ahead of you in your career. If you're bad at them, you're going to lose a lot of social capital, especially when you're young, especially when people are thinking, are they going to actually be able to do this? So keep that in mind whenever you're setting up meetings and taking care of them. All right, phone conversations. They aren't used as much today as they were even 5 years ago. Keep in mind that using phone calls is probably not the best way to hold a meeting if you're setting it up. So use phone calls very sparingly. Keep in mind that phone calls take up a lot of people's time. So if email communication is going to do just fine, then don't set up a call with them if you can communicate it over email. Normally what you're going to find is that if it can't be communicated over email, it can normally be communicated through a video call. And that's pretty awesome. So just keep that in mind, unless the other person, of course, wants to hold a phone call specifically. In that case, you just accommodate them. If you're going to have a phone call, a phone conversation with someone, put your phone number where it's easily accessible to that person. In the calendar invite, in the email thread, let them know where it is and tell them, hey, I put it in the calendar invite, I put it in the email thread, so they don't have to scramble and try to find your number whenever it actually comes time to do the meeting. When you're actually on a phone call, make sure you have good service. It's not hard to find a place with good service, especially if you have a little bit of time to prepare for the call, and it makes a huge difference to the call. If your call drops off because of bad service on your end, it can just be really hard and it sucks the time of the person that you're having the meeting with. Finally, make the call in a quiet area. This includes not being in a really loud coffee shop, or if you have to be in a coffee shop or something like that, make sure you have headphones and make sure that you have somewhere to be able to shield your headphones from the noise. This also goes for being outside where there's wind and it really messes with your mic. So if at all possible, be in the quietest area possible so that you can accommodate the person that you are having the meeting with as much as possible. Probably the most often you're going to have a meeting is going to be online through video. It's just very common. Tools like Zoom, Skype, there's a video communication tool on pretty much every social media platform now. It's just becoming the norm today. The biggest thing to remember with video calls and meetings is knowing your video tool. If you use Zoom, know it inside and out. Know it enough to be able to guide the other person through tech issues if they have it. And that's not something that's hard to learn. You can do that now. There's tutorials all over the internet. Just know the tool that you're going to use and be really good at it. That's the way to set yourself apart. Always send a link 10 minutes before a scheduled call. This way, if the person comes to their inbox about 5 minutes early, 2 minutes early, 7 minutes early, whatever, they know that right there is going to be the link and they can join whenever. They don't have to have this mad rush of like, oh my, where's the email? What's going to happen? Do I have a link? Do I have to set up the link? Just be really quick to have that link available to them, especially if they're a really busy person. Just have it right at the top of their inbox so that the minute that they come, they know, oh wow, here's my link. Here's where I go. It's really simple. That's just very, very simple thing to do. That's going to change the way that people see you and help them to trust you in the meeting. When you're actually in a meeting, keep the background professional. Make sure you're professionally dressed. Make sure you don't have an unmade bed in the background. Make sure that you are actually in a setting that looks professional, because that can really impact the way a meeting goes. If you have a closet full of clothes that are kind of messy in the back of a meeting, it is really going to impact the way the person sees you. And finally, be animated. Use your hands. Look at the camera lens as if you were looking at someone and making eye contact with them. And remember, you're always going to come across less animated through a camera lens than you would actually in person. So take time to enunciate your words, take time to be excited and talk about what you're saying, take time to lean into the camera and show your excitement for the other person. It's going to go a long way to making the other person feel comfortable in the meeting and feel like you're a good communicator. All right, in-person meetings. These are the ones that take up the most time for any person. Be respectful of busy people's time. Often when someone's been a long time in their career, which most of us probably haven't been, and normally the meetings that we have are going to be with people who have had a lot more experience than us, know that you're going to have to be extra respectful of their time and keep that in mind all the time. The best way to do this? Always, always, always be on time for the meeting. Don't ever be late. If you have to be there 10 minutes early to make sure that you're there before the other person, make sure that you're there on time, absolutely do that. Just don't ever be late. Remember that coffee is a great investment. Paying $3 to $5 for someone else's coffee is such a good thing, and it is a great statement to make as just a little extra communication tip that you're going to make with the person that you're meeting with. Be very quick to pay for people's coffee whenever you're meeting with them. Or if you're meeting at their office, bring the coffee straight there. It's a huge gesture that's going to go a long way. Remember, when you're meeting with someone, that your body language is very crucial to showing your interest. If you're interested in what they're saying, they're going to respect you more. So smile at them. Make sure that you are making eye contact with them. Make sure that you're leaning toward them to show your interest in what they're saying. Make sure that you're mirroring their body language and using the techniques that you have to be able to show them, I respect your time. I enjoy spending time with you, and I want to learn what you have to tell me. I want to create value for you. So always keep that in mind. And finally, don't cancel a meeting, especially an in-person meeting, unless you absolutely have to. And if it's an emergency, just give a little bit about the emergency instead of just saying, quick emergency, I had to go. It's one of the biggest communication errors that people make, just by saying, oh my God, I had an emergency and I had to cancel. If you do have to cancel, please do it as soon as possible instead of an hour before the meeting. So just make sure that you are very quick with that kind of communication as well. All right, to sum up the meetings, always communicate clearly the value that you are creating for the other person. This is something that if you're going to go into sales at some point, you're going to learn in a lot more depth. But always remember to be restating what this meeting is doing for the other person. It's also very good because if they don't understand the value that you're creating for them, they're going to feel like you're sucking their time. And so make sure that you know and that you are able to tell them and communicate to the person that you're meeting with the value that you're creating. Be really fast at sending calendar invites. As soon as a meeting is scheduled, send that calendar invite to the person. It's very quick to do. It takes probably a minute at the very most. And then what you can say whenever you're responding to their email with the invite is just say, hey, I sent you a calendar invite for that. When you're a busy person, that makes all the difference in the world, and people really, really appreciate that when all they have to do is click yes to go to the meeting instead of having to send the calendar invite to the person. In an actual meeting, err on the side of asking more questions. If you don't know what to do, if you don't know what to say, remember, it's actually better in a meeting not to talk a lot about yourself. It's actually better to listen to the other person more. So get good at asking questions now so that when you're in meetings, when you have to do this a lot of the time, you're going to be really good at it. You're going to be confident in your ability to ask questions. And a basic tip that is going to go along with meetings, that's going to go along with pretty much anything, if you're using the phone a lot, is set up your voicemail box and make sure it's not full. You'd be surprised how many people don't have a voicemail box set up, and it's really crazy how much of a difference that can make whenever you have a great voicemail setup that's just saying, hey, I am who I say I am, and I'm reliable. It speaks a lot to people. All right, let's get into the interactions that you are going to have as a professional in the business world all the time. So building a strong network now is going to really pay off in 5, 10 years. In 5 or 10 years, you're going to have a lot of skills that you've built. Maybe you're going to be wanting to start your own company and you're going to be needing to find investors. You're going to need to find people to work with you. Building a strong network now is going to pay off whenever you're doing big projects like that. All right, communication with your boss. I think that this is probably the thing that young people are most scared of, because they're like, how do I communicate with them? They're this big, scary person that I don't really know how to interact with. It's very simple. Always be the first person that your boss thinks of whenever he needs something new done, whenever he needs a brainstorm, whenever he needs a project idea. Make sure that you are the first person that your boss thinks of. How can you do that? Well, first off, when you're talking, always be the one to close out the conversation. If your boss says, hey, so we'll meet on Tuesday, and say, all right, great, I'll see you Tuesday. It sounds amazing. Show your excitement. Make sure that you're not just leaving your boss hanging thinking, okay, am I going to see him on Tuesday or am I not going to see him on Tuesday? Just be really quick, very open about closing out the conversation. If you're in doubt about your communication with your boss, your manager, just over-communicate. It's a lot better for your manager to come to you and say, hey, it's a little bit of over-communication. You don't have to tell me every detail about your project. Rather than them coming and saying to you, hey, did you get that project done at all? You want them to know that you're getting done what you need to get done. You want them to know that you respect their time. One thing that I did when I first started working at Praxis was every week, I basically put out this document where I outlined what I had done the week before and what I was planning to do the next week. I included links, I included big ideas that I had, and gave that to my boss and manager, a couple other people that were related to the work I was doing, and said, hey, no action needed from you, but feel free to check this out if you want to know what's been going on in my world over the last week. That's one good way of communicating well with your manager that will bring you a lot of return as you continue to grow. And if you ever have any questions, just be making less work for your manager, not more. That includes Googling questions instead of just asking them all the time. Make sure that you are showing your work and being very open instead of having to make them come and chase you down and find you. If you do that, you're going to have a great relationship with your boss, I can promise you. Just be a good communicator. And it really comes down to those things. All right. Let's talk about coworkers. How do you have good relationships with your coworkers? Well, first off, it's the same thing with your boss. Just show your work. Show the projects you're working on. Be open about the things that you're doing and the things that you're creating. Be the first to offer to help whenever they have things going on. In addition to just making sure that you're there for them, this is also really good for your own skills as a person. Maybe you're in a marketing role, but the sales team needs some leads pulled together. You can learn a whole bunch about sales while you're still in a marketing role and gain that useful experience that you can take wherever you want to go in your career. So always be ready to offer to help, especially when you're just getting started. It's amazing. Be open about your project timelines. Let people know when you're planning to get something done. Don't ever have your coworkers questioning if and when you're going to get a project done. Just tell them when you're going to have it done and then have it done by that time. It just is one of the best ways to keep good open communication with your coworkers. And then always remember that small, thoughtful gestures go a long way toward establishing great relationships with the people that you work with. We just hired an apprentice. Her name is Juliana. And one of the first things that she did whenever she came and joined the team was she sent out a Slack message to us all and said, hey, One of the first things that I'd like to do since moving here is take you all out for lunch wherever. The only thing that I need you to do is drive me there and pick the place, and I will pay for your lunch. Guess what? Every single one of us took her up on that offer because it was so amazing. It was such a thoughtful thing. We all love having our lunch paid for. We all love showing people around the city, and it just was so perfect. It's a very simple thing that you can do, and it goes to show that sometimes the little things and the sweet things are the things that go a really long way to establishing really good communication with your coworkers. All right, networking. And the biggest question I get about networking is, what the heck is it? Networking is basically a broad term for any kind of communication that you make with people outside of your workplace directly. You're going to be networking a lot. This is a lot of conferences. It's going to be at marketing events that you go to, pretty much anything. A lot of email interactions are also a form of networking. The biggest thing to keep in mind is always create more value for a person than you cost them. I don't care who that person is. Keep that in mind whenever you're networking, and always be asking yourself that question. Am I creating value for them? Is this really going to be valuable to them? Don't ever let yourself be a time suck on another person. One of the best ways to network, work on your personal brand. Make sure that your social media clearly shows who you are as a person. Don't just share weird memes and political stuff if what you really care about is the work that you're doing and the things that you're building. Make sure that you're open about those things on your social media. And not just social media, but make sure that you're open about what you're working on a personal blog and things like that, so that people know that, oh wow, this person's doing really cool things. Secondly, learn what we call here at Praxis the moves management system. I'm going to get into this more in the blog post that I'm going to send you guys, but it's basically the process of making sure that for everything that you ask someone to do for you, you do 7 things for them. Now, a lot of people look at this and say, oh, so you're counting the amount of things you do for people? Isn't that a little sketchy? But really, it's super cool to start keeping track of things like that, because you realize that once you've done 7 things for another person, you're so invested into them, and you're really, really good at building a strong relationship for them. So I'm going to post a link with that in the blog post that I'm going to write about it. And if you want to learn a little more about what the moves management system is and how to use that for a great networking idea, that's all going to be in the blog post that I'm going to send you guys tomorrow. Shout outs go a really long way to making people feel really comfortable around you and letting them know that they are valuable to you. Be quick to shout people out on social media. If you like an article they wrote, share it. It's very simple to do. And instead of just going to events and being there, follow up. Send people emails. Tell them how much you enjoyed talking to them. Things like that go a really long way toward being a really great networker. And finally, some tips on basic interactions. Remember that every professional relationship that you have is an investment. Are you a worthy investment to the people that you're interacting with? That's not only for the networking, that is for with the communication with your boss. That's for communication with your coworkers. Remember that them spending time with you, them giving you projects, them doing things with you is an investment on their part, and make sure you are a worthy investment. How to do that? Send thank you notes. Be really good at that. We talk about this a lot at Praxis. If you listen to our other content, you're going to hear a lot about thank you notes. Our founders strive to show the power of what things like that are. We have an entire wall here at Praxis with thank you notes from our participants that we really, really appreciate. Things like that go a long way to making sure that you are establishing great communication with everyone that you're working with. Secondly, be a person that people want to invest time into. This goes much farther than communication. If you're doing cool projects and showing that you're doing cool stuff, and if you're just honestly learning more and being the kind of person that people want to be around, you're gonna be so much better off whenever you're growing in your career than if you are just kind of like, I'm just doing this, not really showing much of it. I'm just kind of learning. I'm just kind of here doing my job. Be someone that people want to invest time into. And finally, if you're going to attend conferences, don't just attend conferences for the sake of attending conferences. Do things that interest you, meet with people that interest you, attend conferences that interest you. That's going to go a long way toward helping you build a professional network that you are proud of and that you can come to constantly, no matter what happens in the next 5 to 10 years of your career. All right, so to leave you at the end of this, we've gone through a whole bunch of tips. And again, I'm going to send you that follow-up so that you guys can check it out and deep dive into this a lot more if this is something that you're interested in. But I want you to remember this webinar in something more than just all the tips. I want you guys to have something actually actionable to go away from. So I've summed it up for you in one sentence and one question. These are the things that you can always come back to and constantly be telling yourself. The sentence is, be true to your word. It's very simple. If you say you're going to do something, do it. If you say you're going to submit a project at a certain time, do it at that time. Don't ever not be true to your word. Always be true to your word. It's a great thing to remember, and it's very, very simple to remember as well. And the question is, when people think of you, do they think of a good communicator? Ask yourself this today. Ask yourself this tomorrow. Ask yourself this in 6 months, in 10 years. This is something that you'll constantly be keeping close to you and asking yourself. That is something, because you are going to be an investment to other people, always be asking this. When people think of me, do they think of a good communicator? All right, so Drake is going to take over. I'm really excited to hear the surprise that he has for us. I'm really excited to hear you. And he's going to take over and talk a little bit about the philosophy behind Praxis and also how we specifically take skills like this, because communication is just one skill that you learn at Praxis. It's a very big, it's very integral, but it's just one facet of the entire thing. So take it away, Drake.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you very much for sharing that presentation. There's a lot of value jam-packed in there, and I'm sure people learned a lot. So let's dive into what Praxis is and what we do. So to start things off, we're going to cover kind of why we do what we do before we get into the actual logistics. So you see here, there are 2 different approaches to learning. On the left, you're going to see what is more common in the traditional school setting, high school, college, etc. And that is a linear progression. It's got a beginning, it's got an end, and you kind of go through the process of a lot of theory, a lot of theory, a lot of theory, and then at the very end, you graduate and you finally put everything into practice. You graduate, you get your degree, and now you can go launch your career. At Praxis, we kind of see learning in a different light, and we redesign that process into something that is not linear. It doesn't have a beginning and an end. It's a constant cycle, and it has more of a focus on the practice side of things over everything else. So you will still get some theory. That's kind of where you have to start off to get the basic knowledge of what you're getting into. But putting focus into actually applying those skills and solidifying them through using them to create something, that's going to retain a lot more information of what you learned than anything else. So when you go through the boot camp, you'll notice this. It's very, very apparent. You're never just learning something for the sake of learning it. You're learning something that's directly valuable to yourself or to others, and you'll be doing the same thing when you put it into practice. So outside of that, what drives us as a company, as a program, as a community, it's all focused on value and value creation. We've done a lot of looking into what is valuable, what is essential, and what people what they look for when they're looking for someone to hire, they're looking for someone to work with, a business partner. And we've boiled it down to the fact that 2 things really are the most important in your career, and that is 1, creating value, and 2, proving that you can do just that. So keeping in mind that value is something that is essential and very important to have your sights set on is a good first step. But let's dive into those 2 points that I just made and break down a little bit of how we can approach that in an effective way. So the first one was creating value. And we boiled it down to 3 separate action items. And the first one is dropping that permission-based mindset. And what this looks like is if you notice that your employer, the company that you're working with, maybe they have an outdated website. Maybe they have some workflows that can use some streamlining. Maybe things just aren't running as well as they could be. typically you would walk up to your boss and say, I noticed that there are a couple of problems with the way we're doing things. This website's outdated, these workflows need streamlined. Do you mind if I take that project on myself? And that puts a lot of pressure on your boss because they don't know if you have the abilities to do those things. And they don't know, like, what if I say yes and then I'm not happy with what you turn in? I don't want to feel bad for saying yes and then changing my mind. It's a lot of pressure when they're already busy. So it's going to be a lot easier for them to say no in that circumstance. And if you compare that to instead going home, redesigning the website on your own, streamlining those workflows, and taking the work in your own hands and completing it before ever saying anything, and then walking into work, showing it to your boss, that's going to make it a lot easier for them to say yes. Or if there is something they're unhappy with, they have everything that you've done right in front of them, so they can easily say, yeah, okay, tweak that, and then we're going to be good. So dropping that permission-based mindset and really just taking initiative to solve these problems that you run into and that you spot. Even if you're wrong, even if they don't adopt the changes that you've made, you learned a lot through that process and you created something awesome that can go on your portfolio. So that is a very essential skill to have. And then once you do that, you can move on to the second piece of this, which is identifying problems actively and vigilantly. And what that really means is walking into your job and asking questions. First, the first thing that you're going to want to do is completely gain 100% total understanding of your role. I guess that's kind of unrealistic because you're always going to be growing and learning, right? But just making sure that you learn everything there is to learn about your role, and you know the ins and outs of how everything works. And then you can start asking questions in other departments and start understanding how the company as a whole works. When you ask these questions in your customer service and you want to ask about how marketing runs certain campaigns or the kind of tools that they use, that's going to be very valuable too, because they are very immersed in what they're doing every day and they're probably great at it, but there might be some things that are in their blind spots because they've got into thought patterns or habits or a workflow, and there's nothing wrong with that, but having that fresh perspective, you're likely going to be able to offer some value by seeing some things that they might not have seen before, and vice versa. So be open to people asking questions, be open to people kind of being nosy into what you're working on, because honestly, when the information is out there and transparency is a big deal, there's a lot of opportunity to find those problems that you can solve. And when you're solving problems, you're creating value. So the third thing is finding your niche. And this is probably going to come the last of the three. After you have already discovered how the company works, you've already dropped that permission-based mindset, because finding your niche means that you have identified where your strengths are, you've identified where your weaknesses are, and you've identified what you really enjoy doing. And the intersection between all of those things is going to be your niche. Like Lita was saying in the communication workshop, making sure that you are the person that your boss thinks of when they have a new project. That is exactly what I mean. Make a name for yourself. Make sure that there is at least something that if someone in the company needs it, you're the guy, you're the girl. They go to you, and that's just how it works. So dropping that permission-based mindset, actively seeking out problems to solve, and finding your niche are all a great 3-step way to start jumping into creating value in your workplace. But how do you go about proving that? And this is something that we've been told our entire lives, but it really is important here. And that is, don't just tell people, show them what you mean. So you can't just say, I'm proficient in Salesforce. I am fluent in this coding language. I can run marketing campaigns. Prove it. So while you're working on these projects, make sure you're writing blog posts about what you're learning. Make sure that you are saving your projects and building out a portfolio. So when you're searching for a new opportunity, or even a promotion opportunity from where you're already at, or even just in a position where you are in a position and you want to show what value you already have created, you have a portfolio. You can show the projects you've worked on. You can show these blog posts on how you've been learning on your own time, and having the discipline to keep those blog posts going is a skill in its own. So being able to document everything that you're doing as you're learning it, as you're building it, that's going to ensure that you have evidence. And when you can prove your capabilities with evidence, there's really nothing that anyone can say because you have that proof there. And if the proof could use improvement, then it could use improvement. That's on you. You can improve your skills, develop them further, document that, and then you're in the same position. So that was the philosophy of how we got started doing what we do, why we do it. But let's talk a little bit about the logistics of the program and the way it's actually structured. So Praxis is a year-long program that consists of a 6-month professional boot camp and a 6-month paid apprenticeship at a startup. We have over 60 business partners in our network right now, and it's always growing. So there's never a shortage of opportunity there. When you go through the initial 6-month boot camp, you're going to be focusing on a lot of skills development, project building, and portfolio development as well. Focusing on creating your digital footprint and your online presence. You can see here you'll be creating a personal website where you have your blog, your projects, your social media links, all of it, as well as one-on-one advising. So you'll go through our curriculum, but you'll also have some goals that you set for yourself. And we're going to be there to support you every step of the way to make sure you're setting those goals effectively and achieving them. So the boot camp is a very, very potent and condensed experience. You're learning a lot during that time. We have 30-day writing challenges. We have philosophy modules. So you're taking in a lot of information. And of course, like I said at the beginning, all the deliverables that you are turning in are not just for the sake of turning something in. They are going to be valuable for your portfolio, or they're going to be creating value for maybe another small company in your town, or maybe you're selling something. So everything that you're doing because it's valuable, you're doing because it's applicable, and it's always going to be transferable to the real world because it is real world work. So after the boot camp, you move on to the apprenticeship. You get placed with our placement advising team. They'll help present some opportunities for you, and it's up to you to pursue those opportunities. And then when you receive job offers, it's up to you to decide which one you want to accept and where you want to go. And you'll relocate, you'll move out there, and you're going to be continuing the weekly discussions, the skills workshops and the advising. But you're also going to be working on creating extra value. And we're going to kind of switch gears from doing these projects to develop your own personal skills to doing some projects to create value at your business partner. We're going to be working with you that entire time to make sure that you make yourself irreplaceable. So when the time comes that you graduate Praxis and they have no obligation to continue working for you or working with you, they're going to want to hire you anyway. So yeah, during this time, we're making sure that you're staying on track to create value. You're achieving your goals still. You're meeting with your cohort and your community as well, and essentially just kind of kicking ass and taking names. So we went through all of the structure of the program, and now it's time for the giveaway that I mentioned earlier. We are giving away 3 $50 Amazon gift cards for anyone that applies within a week from today. So you have until May 9th. You can go online to discoverpraxis.com/apply and fill out our quick 15-minute application, and you will be entered into this giveaway to get some Amazon cards and to treat yourself. So that being said, that's all I have for our presentation on Praxis. If you guys have any questions afterwards, you are always welcome to send either Lolita or myself an email, and we have a bunch of free resources on our website as well for any extra information you guys are looking for. But for now, we will answer a couple questions and then let you guys get back to your night. So let's put this up over here.
Yeah, there have been a lot of great questions in the chat here. You guys are some really great attendees. Thank you so much.
A lot of activity.
Let's see. I work in an environment where I don't have the same supervisor every day, and there is no work performance report given to employees. How would you suggest methods to show these principles in this kind of a workplace? You want to take it?
Sure. Yeah. That is an interesting situation for sure. I would say, your supervisor isn't the only person that needs to be seeing the value you're creating. Definitely, it's very important for them to be seeing that, but the people that you work with, it's important for them to see that as well. In addition to creating that value just for yourself and developing those skills, I think, honestly, just adopting everything that we've talked about, despite who's watching, is the best way to go. You're going to grow quickly, and the people that are there, whatever supervisor you do have that day, they're going to notice, and your coworkers are going to notice. Anything that is going to be constant in that environment, they're going to see that. I'm sure of it. So yeah, I think my answer to this is definitely just kind of adopting these things anyway, despite, and just trusting that people will see it.
I think that's a great answer. The one thing that I would add to that is you know better than anyone else what those employers are wanting to see, and just build a system, develop a system that you can use to show everyone that's working with you, maybe not at the same time, but like if you're working with a new employer, just be like, hey, this is what I've been doing like over the last week. If that's valuable to them, obviously like there's not a lot of context for this specifically, but think of some way that you can show them what you've been working on, that you can show them what you're doing, and then use that so that they always know this is what Steven is using. This is like the things that he's been doing. I always know that when I work with Steven, he's going to have like a Google document with a list of the things that he's been working on so far. If you build a brand around that in your workplace, no matter how big it is, you're going to create a lot of value for the people around you. That's awesome.
Absolutely. So this is a good question. I work at a bank, and almost everything is very regulated, at least in the part that I work. How can I apply the no permission mindset in a very regulated industry like this?
I think that comes down honestly more to your relationships with the people, because for every regulation, there's going to be another relationship that you can build with someone. And if you can't apply the no permission mindset to the things that you're working on, apply it to the projects that you're working on outside of work. Apply it to the things that you're doing with your coworkers. Apply it to the people that you're interacting with. There are so many ways to expand. So don't let yourself be quelled. Don't let yourself struggle with the fact that, oh my God, I'm in this environment that's completely cutting me off. I think that that's only a great way to expand your creativity, honestly. What would you say to that, Drake?
Yeah, I think, I think honestly, when I gave my example of the website, the workflows, you went and you did this on your own. But ideally it's in an environment where you haven't enacted it yet, right? So you can still do these things and approach your boss and say, hey, you mind if we do this? You mind if we make this small change? Everything, it might be regulated, but there is going to be some degree of, that location has this specific way of doing things, and maybe there's a little bit leniency. Maybe there's not. I'm not completely sure, but regardless, I think taking that initiative anyway, coming up with those ideas, getting in the habit of doing that, that's another thing. They're going to notice it. They don't have to enact it, and you're going to be building out a portfolio by doing that and getting in the habit of doing it. So if you're in a position in the future where you can, it's not really a challenge anymore because you're used to it. So I would say, again, just kind of doing it. You don't have to make any actual changes to the way things are done. Doing it for yourself and presenting it to the person who can decide. And then if they decide, no, it's not a huge deal, you have creative value and you have grown yourself a little bit.
That's awesome. Hey, I just found another really good question here in the chat. It's not in the question specifically. I know a goal of Praxis. It's from Clara. I know a goal of Praxis is to help figure out where you want to go career-wise. How do they do that?
Yeah, I think the first thing is by taking off the stress of thinking that your career is going to be a marriage that you are stuck with for the rest of your life. It's not like that. I would argue that we take the position that your career is something that it's going to involve a lot of experimentation. It's going to be kind of a connect the dots scenario. You might work a little bit over here, in this industry, in that industry, because it's going to take experience to discover what you really are good at and what you enjoy. So I think the biggest thing is don't stress over finding the best career for yourself, because you're going to do that in experimentation and dabbling anyway. It'll be pretty clear as you get into a position and into an industry whether or not this is, something that you can see yourself sticking with for the rest of your life or not. And maybe you don't even ever have a position that you're in for the rest of your life. Maybe you are the type of person that just kind of explores and does different things. You might be in operations for 10 years, and then maybe you're in marketing for 5, and then sales for another 5, and then you switch over to music for 15 years. Who knows? It's not something that you have to stress about knowing exactly what it'll be for the rest of your life, because that's not the case.
Oh, I love that so much. It's so true. And remember that the jobs that you're going to be holding in 10 years, 15 years, they don't even exist yet. Technology is increasing so fast, and that's something to be really excited about. So I would definitely agree with Drake that it's not about finding that one perfect path. We tend to come into our careers thinking, hey, what am I going to do? And we have this thing, when I was 6 years old, I was going to be a fireman. I was very sure about that. I was going to fight fires all the time. And I think that changed by the time I was around 8 or 9, and I was going to be a teacher maybe. I was going to be a musician after that, So it's a myth that we all subject ourselves to at some point or another, thinking that, hey, when I try this out, I'm going to be in this career for the rest of my life. And actually, most of the time, that's not the case. Unless you want to be something like a doctor or a lawyer that takes a lot of time investing into. A lot of careers are much more fluid than you think. So what we focus on at Praxis is getting you opportunities. Instead of focusing on, all right, what's the next 10 years of your life going to look like? What's the next 20 years of your life going to look like? We're going to plan that out. We're going to get you on a straight path. Instead, we say, what is the next opportunity that you can build? What is the next skill that you can gain to get you that next opportunity? And once you start looking at life this way, you start realizing how many options are open to you, how many things you can try out, how many different projects you can be working on the side. And it really, really, it's just an amazing experience whenever you can realize that. So I hope that answers your question, Clara.
Yeah, I love it. So this is a good one. How should I start and close my email messages? Do I just start with hello name for the top line? Do you have any notable tips and tricks for structuring emails and email templates?
Ooh, that is really good. Yeah, I mean, starting out with hello name, that's a great thing. If you like hi better, that's also a little, a little less formal. It's a great way to start. I don't use a lot of templates specifically. The only template that I use is being interested in the other person. Instead of just saying, hi, I do this and this and this, and I am this and this and this, and here's what I've been working on. Talk about yourself less. Instead of just saying, here's what I do, here's what I am, here's what I'm good at, say, what have you been working on lately? Or ask something specific about the person. Normally, if you're having an email conversation with them, there's some way of accessing a little bit of information about them from the company that they're working with, maybe from their LinkedIn profile. And it's always really good to show your interest in the person in general. So maybe ask a question. That's something that I do in a lot of emails that I send. Instead of just saying, I'm Lolita and I work with the marketing department and here's what I want you to do for me. I say, hi, I'm Lolita. Here's what I do. I think that I've seen this article that you wrote and I really enjoyed it. And here's a specific quote that I really liked. What motivated you to write the article? Something like that. So the basic template I use is showing interest in the other person. I don't know, Drake, you do a lot of more, a lot of things that actually involve using specific templates for emails. What do you use?
Yeah, so questions are a fantastic way to keep the flow going. I definitely ask questions as much as I can because it makes sure that you're likely going to get a response unless they don't see the email or for some reason they don't want to talk anymore. It's a fantastic way to ensure that you get a response. As far as structure goes, for importance for me, I think that a greeting line and a signature are the only things that I really hold myself to. So, hey Lolita, comma, and then start my body. And then for like the signature, I do best Drake or all the best or cheers is another good one. It doesn't always have to be sincerely or anything super formal, but making sure that you at least have those two pieces of the puzzle in there, I think is the most important part for me. What happens in the body, I don't put as much weight on that because I focus more on making sure my grammar is very good, what I'm saying is coherent and understandable. But as far as structure goes, I just want to break it into readable chunks. You don't want a wall of paragraph, of course. But yeah, I think my main focus in the body is grammar, punctuation, and readability. So I would just keep your chunks, your paragraphs, whatever you want to call them, fairly short, 2 to 3 sentences at most, and then break it and start another one. And that makes it a lot easier and welcoming to the person that you're sending it to. But oftentimes, you're not going to be sending walls and walls of text if it is a back and forth conversation. So yeah, I think that's my main thing is have a greeting, have a signature, and then just make sure that your email overall is proofread and easy to read through.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, are you ready to close out so far?
Yeah, I think we're at a good place to end this. Like I said, you guys, if you have any other questions, shoot us an email and we are happy to speak with you. Like Lita said, we will be back at you within 24 hours. So yeah, definitely send anything our way. Lita, thank you so much for the communication workshop. It was amazing. So thank you for devoting your time into that. And I will see everyone next month. Well, maybe not everyone. But,
Yeah, I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for the great questions that you asked. And again, we're going to be responding back up. I see a question about applying for the gift card specifically. So all you have to do is apply. Go to discoverpraxis.com/apply. Send in your application within the next week, and we'll enter your name in a drawing for that gift card, and we will notify you if you win it. But again, you aren't entered into the drawing unless you apply. So we'll be looking for that application. We'll definitely mention the winners within about a week and a half or so you guys will know if you have won the gift card. Thank you guys so much, and we will see you later.
Have a good night, guys.